Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all my guys, gals, non binary pals. Uh, as promised, this is part two of yesterday's What Happened to Ian Moving story. But before I start, as always, this is going to be my new thing. I give out the suicide hotline phone number, which is 988. If you're feeling any which type of way, where you think a permanent solution might be the answer to a temporary problem, stop watching this video and dial 988 because there are people who love you and you're needed. And as someone who's known people who have made that decision, I see the harm it causes, and I'm pretty sure if they could go back in time, they would make a different decision. So 988 is more important than this video. And there's not much more important than this video. So, secondly, just a little description of my day. I'm not going to do any politics today. I slept. That's it. Well, I did some work after I woke up, but I think I've been going at things so hard looking for a place to live, dealing with stress, that my body was just like, Ian, off. And I'm grateful. I needed that. So I took the day off and woke up feeling somewhat refreshed, did some work up until midnight, which is the amount of time we can work until, and then decided I had to come on and finish the story. So yesterday was the Arizona story. Today is the Boston story. So, again, history repeated itself. Once I made the decision I was going to move to Massachusetts, I made it so quickly that I didn't think things through. I didn't organize things as well as I should have. And while looking for a place, I ended up with a roommate I had never met before. I'm not going to say his name, it's irrelevant. But it was in my price range. It was within the location I wanted to be, which was closer to my family. And it seemed to make sense. What didn't make sense was I made the connection through social media. And I'm not saying through like Trulia or Apartment, through Facebook. Don't find random roommates through Facebook. Piece of advice if I can give anyone here. So I explained to where I was living in Arizona at the time, my situation, and they could not have been more understanding. I'm going to give them a shout out. The complex was called the Tessera, run by awesome people, and is a great facility. And if anyone ever wants to move to Arizona, I highly recommend them. Me leaving Arizona had zero to do with them. So I find a place. I don't ask for any details. Why the guy who was organizing it was moving out, but he had moved in with a roommate who was staying in. And that should have been a red flag for me, but it wasn't because I didn't want it to be. So, got in my car, just started driving. Made really good time, spent one night at my cousin's house in Oklahoma. Shout out to Morgan and her husband Dirk. And really, it was good to see. I mean, this was actually my first time physically meeting Dirk. Great guy. And my cousin Morgan had been way too long. It was just really good to see them. I wish I could have spent more time with them. They're incredibly awesome people. And so then I hit the road. And I stopped off in Ohio, and my body just turned off. I had intended on driving straight through, but I ended up taking 2 days in Ohio, mainly from exhaustion, not from anything else. It wasn't like COVID where I had last time when I was driving to Arizona. So I get to Massachusetts, I check into the hotel, and I get sicker than I felt in probably since I moved to Arizona. It wasn't COVID, I took a test, but it was a flu plus a cold plus laryngitis plus too I had too much of an ego to see a doctor. So I was just sick and sick, and I wasn't able to see my family because I wasn't going to bring sickness into their home. On top of that, the moving company just kept lying to me. Rewind. Once the moving company arrived to Arizona to get my stuff, 3 hours late, they packed it all up and were very nice at the time, put it all in the truck, and then pulled the bait and switch and doubled the price and told me if I didn't pay it right there, they were going to take it all off the truck and leave it in the parking lot of the Tessera. So, under duress, I acquiesced to their request. I have since challenged the credit card bills, and so far they haven't challenged the challenge. I expect it to come, or maybe they realize that they messed up. I digress. Back to where I was. So I arrive in Massachusetts, and I am sick. And it's lasting longer than any sickness I've ever had. We're going on 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So finally, my sister just figuratively gives me a boot in the ass and tells me, you have to go to a doctor. So I go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor who, within 3 minutes, just does a little look and says, yep, you have an infection. Something like laryngitis. Gave me a prescription for antibiotics, and 3 days later, I was fine. Could have prevented myself from a lot of pain. Throughout this whole time, I'm calling the moving company, and they keep pushing the date further. What they weren't aware of was I had put a tracking unit in one of my items, and I saw that it was just sitting in Delaware. Just sitting, not moving. Didn't know what was going on. So while I would call the storage company, they would tell me it's on the way. They had to make an additional stops. I knew I was being lied to. And it sounded like I thought I was being lied to. I knew I was being lied to because I had placed the evidence there without them knowing. Still hadn't met the roommate, but I met the gentleman who arranged it, the guy's former roommate. He showed up at the hotel I was staying at and dropped off the key and told me the landlord's rules are no drama. That should have been a red flag. I mean, that's kind of a weird rule, no drama. I mean, I get it, I agree with it, but to emphasize that tells me that should have been a red flag that there might have been a little drama at the place beforehand. But I was so emphatic about getting there and getting my stuff that whoop, over my head. Well, another week, 2 weeks go by. I get healthy. Still at a hotel, hemorrhaging money. And actually moving from hotel to hotel to hotel because I didn't know how long I'd be staying in hotels, so I had to keep rebooking and places were full, and it was a miserable experience because on top of that, I was sick. But I survived. And the moving company then just one time called me and said, we'll be there in 15 minutes. No preparation, no 24-hour call in advance like they said they would. Just, here we are. Okay. I can't talk to the unprofessionalism that they were. I mean, the gentleman who came to move the stuff at least pretended to be professional till they put the bait and switch in the parking lot. These guys just made it seem like we're going to rush your stuff up and don't worry about us. And basically, we don't care about you. They couldn't fit up, or said they couldn't fit up, although I thought they probably could have, 2 items which had some sentimental value, which I eventually had to throw out because the landlord called me and said, it can't be on the porch, I'll get fined. Which sounded a little weird to me. I mean, it was his porch. I thought, I could have been extended an amount of grace period to figure out what to do with it. No. All these red flags over my head, over my head, over my head. The roommate appeared very nice at the time. We had good conversations. We obviously came from different points of life. He was a line painter on the streets. I'm an attorney, no disrespect. Every profession is needed. So, but then something happened one day. It was very strange. I get a text from him saying, you have to clean blah, 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 and send photos. And I looked at this. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I didn't cause this mess. But you know what? Maybe I did. Maybe it slipped my mind. I said, fine, won't happen again. Don't worry about it. Once again, not a guy of conflict. And believe it or not, I'm not the dirtiest guy in the world. Not the cleanest guy in the world, but not the dirtiest guy in the world. We ended up talking, pretending like that text never happened. Okay? Happened again. And at this point, it's getting a little weirder because he's definitely accusing me of making messes that I'm 90% sure I didn't make. Now, as someone who doesn't drink or do drugs, I don't black out. So there's nothing I can't remember. And he put on there, you S-H-I-T, on the wall. I don't know how you did that. No, I didn't. I'd be curious how someone could do that, but no, I didn't. He didn't supply a picture, but okay, whatever. I ignored the text. And then he just started getting more. So it's like we had 2 different relationships. There was him being aggressive over text about cleanliness, which either was the dirty parts were caused by him and he was forgetting it, or he was lying, but then we were friendly in person. It was very strange. Very strange. And one day we were just talking, having conversation, and it came up that I was born into a Jewish family. I mean, I don't identify as Jewish. I identify as an atheist. And you could see something a little turned in him. It was odd. I'm not one to make accusations, but just something in his demeanor changed. Now, he would oftentimes and this is something I feel bad about, not just stopping the conversation, calling him out on. He would use words that are unacceptable to me, and I just let it slide. I mean, what do I always say my rule is about the N-word? I don't say it, end of rule. But he would say it in just regular parlance, just like part of his vocabulary. Not in like a hateful way, but I need to realize any use of that word is hateful. He would use the R word, and somebody with a developmentally disabled member of his family, took offense to that, but I didn't call him out on it. And these are things I regret, because I thought, maybe I could have used that as a educational opportunity, or it could have related to a conflict. Either way, I let it slide, and I realize now I shouldn't have. And I regret that. And if situations like that present themselves in the future, I will handle them differently. All I can say is I regret not being aggressive in my feelings about the usage of those terms, because they're wrong and shouldn't be used by anybody. But I created this thing. I'm like, well, he's not coming at it from like a hateful way. It's just how he talks. And maybe that's just because we have different levels of education. All these excuses in my mind, which are nonsense. So I keep getting these nastier and nastier texts about cleanliness. And I know I'm not making these messes. I just know it. So I just ignore them, because it seems like whenever we talk, it's normal. So if I just ignore it, whatever. If you ignore things, they just don't go away, is what I learned. One night he came home quite drunk, but you know what? People are allowed to get drunk. I'm not. Someone who's dealt with substance abuse, that is not an option I personally have. He does. Then I come home one day and my room is like thrown upside down. Like someone was looking for something, but I didn't have anything valuable in there. I kept, anything of value somewhere else. So I knew he had to have gone to my room. Like, it was a mess. And this was a Sunday. So I went to my computer. I'm just like, I need to calm down. I don't want to make an accusation, because the worst thing I can do is make a false accusation. And I put on my headphones. I start doing work. And he starts screaming and screaming and screaming. And I'm not going to repeat everything he said, because it was quite nasty. And I was honestly trying to not listen. I'm going to get the landlord involved. You're going to have to pay the entire rent, which is nonsensical. And basically over this cleanliness issue, which I at that point determined that for some reason he didn't like me. Could have been based on what we talked about the culture I was born into, an assumption, not a fact. And just going and going and going. And I try to avoid conflict now. I haven't always been that way, but I really try to avoid conflict. So it's obvious that he was the one who went into my room and did whatever it is he did. Just threw stuff all over the place, and it was disgusting. So I'm just ignoring him, and he unplugs my computer, which you can't do. He grabs the chair I'm sitting in, which he doesn't know is battery. He thinks you have to actually touch somebody for it to be battery. No, if you touch something that's directly connected to somebody else, that's battery. Law school. Thank you, Pace. Grabbed my phone and wouldn't let me leave. Sort of stood in the way. Now, had I tried to go around him, that would have eventually resulted in a physical altercation, which I was not going to get involved in. So that was entrapment. More so than it was. pretty much I'm just thinking tort on tort on tort on tort. And at this point, I realized this roommate situation isn't going to work anymore. That I'm going to have to go somewhere else. Eventually, the landlord shows up, who, other than being like a helicopter landlord and really just being on top of me all the time, I believed at that point was a very nice guy. Uh, he was a black gentleman. And I say that just because feel a certain way about the roommate and his prejudices. So I found the relationship to be strange. That's the only reason why I bring that up. And the landlord showed up and then like sided with him. And it was very odd because the landlord knew I was right. Because every time he was like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw all your shit out," and stuff, the landlord's like, "No, no, no." Like, he knew enough landlord tenant law to stop the guy when he was saying stuff that could get him in trouble. But when he would say, "No, I didn't assault you, I didn't touch you, I touched the chair you were in," well, the landlord probably doesn't know the exact definition of assault. So it's like, yeah, I agree. Which is just the law, he's wrong. So the landlord totally took his side. Okay, fine. So eventually I leave. I go to my sister's place. I explained to my sister and her spouse the situation. They told me I could work out of their home the next day. So I did. And once I went back to the apartment, I packed up my computer and then I brought it to my sister's the next day and I put in a full day of work. And I decided to start apartment searching. And I stayed in the Ramada in Dorchester, the place where I used to say, I'm not going to say where I am. And I must say, it was very nice. Very nice. It exceeded the expectations I would have for a Ramada. So obviously, it wasn't like a Hilton or a Marriott, but it exceeded my expectations. So I was staying there, hemorrhaging money. I got a real estate agent who, really nice guy, but didn't seem to put emphasis on my project that I needed a place to stay. At this point, all my stuff is still in the old apartment, which is worrisome to me, but I had the keys, but I didn't feel safe. Not that I didn't feel safe, I just didn't want there to be a conflict where someone could get hurt. Because that's not how I live my life. So a few days later, I had the office holiday party. So I drove down to New Jersey. And you can watch my video on the office holiday party. But although it wasn't what I expected, I had unrealistic expectations just based on the people who were there and not there. But ultimately, I had a very good time. And the idea was planted in my head to come back to Jersey. But there was a very strong guilt feeling in me because I really loved being close to my sister, her spouse, and my 3 nephews and niece. So I was really very, very torn. So I came back to Massachusetts, same Ramada, different room, not as nice of a room, but still very nice. And I spoke to a lot of people about it. Until just one person put it in perspective, which just the answer clicked. You don't have a bar license in Massachusetts, Ian. You can't practice law in Massachusetts. You really want to go through that process again of trying to get admitted? And the answer is no. No, I don't. So it makes no sense for me to be there other than my family. But then I realized if I'm 4 hours away from my family, I can still show up all the time. The reason I didn't show up when I lived here previously was because I chose not to, because I was a lazy SOB. So I made the decision I was going to come back. The most difficult part of the decision, I thought, was going to be discussing it with my sister and her spouse. Because I didn't want to do it over the phone. I didn't want to do it over text. I wanted to go over there and explain to them what happened and deal with, whatever feelings they may have about it. And they made it so easy. They understood, they were loving, they were respectful, and God, I love my family so much. I love those six, sorry. Yeah, six, yeah. I mean, they were just so good to me. And I really look forward to going up there more often than I ever did before. If they're in a show, better be dang sure I'll be there. They just want to talk. They need a babysitter for a night. That's a 4-hour drive. Easy, I'll take. So I checked into the Ramada in Parsippany. Now, I'm not going to give it a bad review online, but I wouldn't suggest staying in this hotel. Just going to leave it at that. You compare the Ramada in Dorchester to the Ramada in Parsippany. Not much of a comparison. It's not that nice. It's not gonna lie. No fridge in my room. A little more bugs. Shower has some rust in it. All deal. And then I got another real estate agent who is licensed here, who put in a lot of effort, unlike the previous one, who was, once again, very nice guy, but just, I don't think, put my situation on the forefront. This gentleman did put my situation on the forefront. Showed me a lot of places, and ultimately I found one. And on Thursday I move into my new home. And I put this whole moving out of New Jersey situation not behind me, because I learned a lot from it. Again, don't regret going to Massachusetts. I don't regret any part of it. One part I forgot to tell you was I had been trying to contact the landlord about getting my security and February rent back. And I was doing it by text message because Massachusetts is a commonwealth, and most commonwealths are two-party consent to have a conversation with, which means if I call someone and record it, I need their consent to record it. New Jersey is a one-party consent. I can make a phone call, record it, and I don't need the other party's consent. So I decided to rely on text message. I had been text messaging him the entire time. Probably looked like a psycho girlfriend if you look at... let me pull it up here. Look, see? That's all me. I look like a psycho girlfriend, but it was on I look like a psycho girlfriend, but it was on purpose, because I didn't want there to ever be an accusation that I fell out of communication, that he couldn't find me, that he tried. And I was ready to litigate. And I actually got a call yesterday from him saying he was in Jamaica and that he will make everything good financially on right after he gets back on January 27th. Do I necessarily believe him? No. Do I know what make good financially means? No. But I'm going to wait till January 27th. That's way within the statute of limitations. And I don't need that money right now. So I'm back in Jersey. I'm in the Ramada, room 103. Come visit. And that's the story of me back in Jersey. So tomorrow, hopefully I make the Super Bowl of my fantasy football team, the Drug Addict Olympics. And I can go back to talking about politics. But now you know the whole Arizona, Boston, and now I'm back. Once again, I love you. Tomorrow was the best day of my life. And in Taylor, we trust.